Whatever you're chasing right now, money, pleasure, or something you build with your hands, someone already tested it at a scale you'll never reach. Solomon had more silver and gold than any king in Jerusalem's history, houses built, vineyards planted, wine, laughter, every pleasure his eyes wanted. His verdict: vanity, chasing after the wind. That's not a warning from a man who failed to get what you want. That's a field report from the one man who got all of it and still tells you plainly in his own words what it couldn't do. He ran the test 3 times, on money, on pleasure, on everything he ever built, and wrote down what happened after each one, so you wouldn't spend your one life finding out the hard way. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because before this ends, he also names exactly what actually held. Start with the money, because that's where Solomon started, and not with a little. Silver and gold, he writes, gathered for himself in heaps. And then a phrase most readers slide right past: the treasure of kings and provinces. Understand what that actually means. This wasn't the savings of one wealthy man. This was the accumulated tribute of other kings, whole provinces paying into a single hand. Entire regions worked, and the return flowed to Jerusalem, to him. He had singers, men and women, to fill his halls. He had servants beyond counting. If you've ever run the real math on your own life, the mortgage, the decades of work traded for a number in an account, hold that number up against a man who owned the treasure of kingdoms and never once had to check the balance. And here's the first thing you need to hear plainly before we go one sentence further. This is ancient wisdom, not financial advice, and never a promise of wealth. Solomon is not a strategy. What follows is not the story of how a man got rich so that you can too. It is the exact opposite. It's the field report of the one man who reached the summit of that mountain, turned around, and told us what was actually there. Because here is what he found. He writes in the book of Ecclesiastes, "So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem." Read that slowly, not equaled, surpassed. There was no one left to measure himself against. He had won the game so completely that the game itself was over. Every metric a man uses to keep score, he had maxed out. And notice he doesn't hide it or apologize for it. He states it flat, like a man reading a total off the bottom of a page. Then comes the verdict. He looks at all of it, the silver, the gold, the tribute of provinces. And he does not say it was worthless. That's the mistake people make with this book. He never says the gold had no value. He says something far more unsettling. He says it could not do the one thing he needed it to do. It could not tell him why. It could not answer the question that woke him in the dark. All of it, he writes, was vanity, a chasing after the wind, a chasing after the wind. Sit inside that image for a second. You felt it. You hit the target. And for about a week, it feels like a rival. Then the target moves. The house you wanted becomes the baseline. The raise becomes the new normal you're now anxious to protect. Solomon wrote it centuries before your paycheck ever cleared. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, not because money is evil, because satisfaction was never the thing money was built to deliver. He was trying to fill a spiritual hunger with a financial answer, and the two simply don't fit. The wind keeps moving. The hand keeps closing on air. That's why the richest man in the whole story is also its emptiest voice. He had removed money as a variable, completely, permanently, and the ache didn't move an inch, which tells you something almost no advertisement will ever tell you. The ache was never about the money, and if the money couldn't touch it, then the man who has far less than Solomon and still believes more of it is the answer, is chasing the very wind Solomon already caught in his hand and let go. So, again, and it matters, this is ancient wisdom, not financial advice, and never a promise of wealth. The point was never your bank account. The point is the ache underneath it. Solomon ran this test 3 times, and money was only the first, because a reasonable man, watching wealth come up empty, does exactly what Solomon did next. He reaches for the thing money is supposed to buy, pleasure. And what happened there was stranger still. So he reaches for pleasure. And watch how deliberately he does it, because this is the part people misread. Solomon doesn't stumble into indulgence like a man losing control. He writes it like a scientist opening a notebook. Come now, he says to himself, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. Test. That's the word. This is an experiment run on purpose by a man with unlimited resources and the wisdom to observe himself while he does it. He isn't drowning his sorrows. He's measuring them, and he holds nothing back. Whatever my eyes desired, he writes, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure. Sit with how total that is. Every one of us has a private list. The things we'd do, the things we'd taste, the places we'd go, if only the money and the permission were there. You've got a version of it. Solomon had the list, and he had no ceiling. Nothing on it was off limits. Nothing was too expensive. Nothing had to wait for the right weekend. If his eyes wanted it, it was his by nightfall. He names 2 of them for us: laughter, mirth, the party, the room full of sound and warmth and forgetting, and wine. He writes that he searched out how to cheer his body with wine, and this is the detail that makes him credible, his heart still guiding him with wisdom the whole time. He wasn't a drunk who lost the thread. He was a sober man conducting a trial, watching to see whether pleasure, pursued to its absolute limit, could finally deliver what the silver couldn't. Now, hear this carefully, because the point is not what you're braced for. Solomon does not come back and call the laughter a sin. He does not moralize the wine. That's the cheap version of this story, and it isn't his. What he says is stranger and harder to shake. He looks back at all of it and says of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? Not evil, useless. He's not condemning the party. He's reporting that the party couldn't hold the weight he set on it. The laughter ended, and the room emptied, and the same silence was waiting for him that had been waiting after the gold. Pleasure, he found, is a real thing, but it is not a foundation. It carries you for an evening. It cannot carry a life. This also, he writes, was vanity, a chasing after the wind. The same verdict as the money, the exact same wind. And you already know the shape of it, even if you've never put it in words. The vacation you counted down to, and how strange the Monday after felt. The thing you finally bought, thrilling on Friday, ordinary by Wednesday. Pleasure has a half-life. It was designed to be enjoyed and released, not clutched and worshipped. And the moment a man asks it to be his reason for living, it thins out in his hands like everything else. And notice what's happening across this experiment. Money failed, so he tried pleasure, and pleasure failed the same way. Two of the three great answers our whole culture sells us, the bigger account, the better weekend, tested to their limit by the one man with the means to test them. And both came back, marked with the same word, vanity, wind. So the disclaimer stands here too, and it's not a footnote. This is ancient wisdom, not financial advice, and never a promise of wealth. Solomon isn't teaching you to earn more or spend better. He's showing you that neither one reaches the ache. But there's a third answer, the one a serious man turns to when money and pleasure both come up empty. The answer that feels on paper like it should actually work. Not buying, not indulging, building. And the test he ran on that one is the longest of the three. So he builds. And this is the one. This is the answer that feels different from the other two. Because it isn't about consuming. It's about creating. A man can tell himself that chasing money was shallow, that chasing pleasure was weak, but building something with your own hands, leaving a mark that outlives you, that feels noble. That feels like the answer that should finally work. Solomon thought so too, and he threw everything he had into it. Listen to the inventory, because he keeps it precise. I made great works, he writes. I built houses. He planted vineyards for himself. He made gardens and parks and planted in them every kind of fruit tree. He dug pools of water, reservoirs, to irrigate a whole forest of growing trees. Let that land. This is a man who didn't just buy a view, he engineered the landscape to make one. He had male and female servants, and more of them born in his house. He had herds and flocks greater than anyone who had come before him in Jerusalem. He is describing an estate you could get lost in for days, an entire world, designed, financed, and constructed to his specification. And here is why this test cuts deeper than the other two. This wasn't spending. This was legacy. You understand that instinct better than most. The reason a man works the hours he works. The reason he pours himself into the business, the house, the thing with his name on it, so that when he's gone, something remains that says, he was here. He mattered. He built this. That's not vanity in the shallow sense. That's the most dignified hunger a human being has. And Solomon fed it more completely than any person in that city's history. Whatever a man could make with his hands and his mind and his gold, Solomon made at a scale you and I can barely picture. Then he stops. He stands in the middle of everything he's built, the houses, the vineyards, the pools catching the light, the forests he watered into existence. And he turns around to take it all in. Then I considered, he writes, all that my hands had done and the toil I had spent in doing it. This is the summit of the whole experiment. The richest man, the man who denied himself no pleasure, standing inside the greatest legacy any king in Jerusalem had ever raised. If a rival exists anywhere on earth, it is on that spot, in that moment. And behold, he writes, all of it was vanity and a chasing after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. Nothing to be gained. Read it slowly, because it's the most devastating line in the three tests. Not, it wasn't enough, nothing gained. The houses would pass to someone who didn't build them. The gardens would grow wild or be forgotten. The name would fade the way every name fades. Standing in the finished dream, The same wind was moving through it that had moved through the gold and the wine. He had reached for the noblest answer we've got. Build something that lasts, and it dissolved in his hands like the other two. The legacy couldn't answer the question either. It just took longer to prove it. And that's the whole experiment, closed. 3 answers: money, vanity; pleasure, vanity; achievement, the great works of his own hands; vanity, and a chasing after the wind. The one man with the means to test all 3 to their absolute limit came back and marked everyone with the same word. So, one last time, and it belongs right here. This is ancient wisdom, not financial advice, and never a promise of wealth. Solomon isn't handing you a better strategy for any of the 3. He's telling you the 3 were never the foundation, which leaves the only question that matters. If money couldn't hold, and pleasure couldn't hold, and the work of his own hands couldn't hold, then what did? Because he doesn't leave us standing in the ruins. Before the book closes, Solomon names the one thing the wind never touched. So, what held? After the gold, the wine, and the great works, all came back marked with the same word. What did Solomon find that the wind never touched? The answer is quieter than you'd expect. So quiet that a man racing after money or pleasure or legacy would run right past it. He doesn't point to a bigger thing. He points to a smaller one, held differently. Here it is, in his own words. There is nothing better for a person, he writes, than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. And then the line that turns the whole book. This, he says, is from the hand of God. Read that again. It's not the meal that changed. It's not the work that changed. It's the same bread, the same day of labor Solomon already had in unlimited supply. What changed is where he finally saw it coming from, received as a gift from Yahweh's hand, an ordinary day holds, grabbed and hoarded as your own achievement. The greatest estate in Jerusalem dissolves into wind. The difference was never the size of the portion. It was whether he took it as a wage he earned or as bread that came down from a hand above his own. That's why all 3 tests failed. And it's the one thread running under every one of them: money, pleasure, achievement. Each of them collapsed the moment Solomon asked it to be the source instead of the gift. Cut off from Yahweh, the gold is just weight, the wine is just an evening, the legacy is just a name the years erase. Apart from him, Solomon writes, who can even enjoy anything? The ache under all of it was never a shortage of things. It was a life trying to stand on gifts while ignoring the giver. And at the very end of the book, when the old king has spent every experiment and seen every limit, he lays it down in a single sentence. The end of the matter, he writes, all has been heard. Fear God, and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Not get more, not feel more, not build more. Stand in reverence before Yahweh and receive your life from his hand. That is the thing the wind could not carry off. That is what actually held. So hear what Solomon is really doing across these 3 tests. He's not scolding you for wanting a good life. He's the richest man who ever ran the experiment, leaning across 3,000 years to save you the years it cost him. So you don't spend your one life climbing a mountain he already reached, only to find the same wind waiting at the top. The money, the pleasure, the work of your hands, enjoy them. Just don't kneel to them. They were always meant to be bread in your hand. never the ground under your feet. If this spoke to something in you today, take a moment and subscribe. There's fresh manna here every single day, a portion of the Word measured out for exactly the kind of week you're carrying. And tell me in the comments, which of the three did you most need to hear about today? The money, the pleasure, or the thing you're building with your hands? I read them, and I'd like to know where this found you, because in the end, the wealthiest man in the book didn't leave us a strategy for getting more. He left us a way to hold what we already have, open-handed, in reverence, as a gift. Receive today as manna from the hand of God, and even an ordinary day becomes enough. Scripture explained. Faith applied. Life changed. This was your daily manna. Come hungry tomorrow.